Cornerback remains a position with some of the biggest question marks heading into the season for the Indianapolis Colts. Can Kenny Moore II return to the Pro Bowl? Will Juju Brents and Jalen Jones take the next step? And where do the Colts cornerbacks stack up in the AFC South? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, fellow analyst, and partner in crime here at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, the cornerback position. We honestly thought the Colts were going to address cornerback this offseason by adding at least a veteran to this group. And Chris Ballard really stuck to his guns from the beginning. He said, we like what we have at cornerback. They're expecting Juju Brents and Jalen Jones to take a step forward here in 2024, but we've heard that before. And we'll have to see, because either this could go one of two ways, really. They could take steps forward, and it could be a brilliant move by Chris Ballard and the Colts, or Brents and Jones don't take a step forward and go to the quality starter level, and it could really bite the Colts, especially when it comes to playoff time.
Yeah, and I do got to say, while, there wasn't a cornerback taken in the early rounds, all right, and there hasn't been a high-level one picked up, or wasn't one anyway, in free agency, I respect the hell out of that move, okay, because you're looking at Jalen Jones. His trajectory is far past anything the Colts could have imagined. That's number one. He could be a starter for all you know, and he just needs to stay out there and keep playing. The same thing for Dallas Flowers. While it's far less of a sample size than Jalen Jones, of course, 4 games, in those 4 games, he looked pretty good. He looked like he was adjusting well, keeping up with receivers. Don't forget that guy was arguably the best, if probably one of the best, if not the best punt returner in 2022. So punt and kick returner. So he's got a lot of athleticism. So I think that they're really trusting what they are seeing in these guys. But like you said, if you look back 5 years and they just can't get it done, especially in 2024, and you just start to see a decline, you'll look back on I think this season and you'll say, they probably should have passed on Latu and taken a cornerback. So we'll have to see a lot of exciting things, I think, to come, though, from this young defensive back group.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how everything develops with this group. But it's also you're going into the 2024 offseason when you have a lot of promise and you really want to capitalize on this young team, the momentum that you had last offseason. And for such an important position to not invest resources in, it's definitely a risk by the Indianapolis Colts. So tonight we're going to talk about the cornerback position. Obviously, it starts with Kenny Moore, the captain, who's been here for a long time. We'll talk about what we expect out of him. We'll dive into the games of Juju Brents and Jalen Jones and if they can take the next step. But don't forget about Dallas Flowers. And there's also some intriguing rookies in this cornerback room to talk about as well. And as always, we are going to compare the Colts cornerback room with the rest of the AFC South. It's going to be a fun one. NFL Nerd already in the chat with some great questions. Will teams with quick passing games eat up the Colts in 2024, neutralize the rush, and take advantage of the young secondary with quick outside passing? I definitely think if the Colts continue to play off coverage, it could be a thing. So it'll be interesting to see how Gus Bradley uses these cornerbacks, because remember, Jones and Brents are bigger physical corners, but they don't necessarily have the long speed. So if they get burnt, or if they get a step behind, it's going to be hard for them to catch back up. We've got Mike in the chat as well. Good to see you. Derek from the Chasing Larger Sports Stories. What's up, boys? Have a lot more faith in the cornerback room than most others do. It's the safety room. I think it needs more help. We're definitely going to talk about the safety group on Monday. That'll be our final positional preview. But yeah, the secondary in general for the Colts just has a lot of question marks around it. Sean is in the chat as well. Good to see everyone here. Now, as that we get everybody else to come on in, please remember, go follow us on all of our things, all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Go ahead and go follow at Colts on _SI. So we've got a new @ on X, at Colts on _SI. So make sure go follow that if you're not already, and then subscribe right here on the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live usually Monday and Thursday night, but things might change. If we have breaking news episodes, if our schedules have to change, you want to have that bell on so you never miss us. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, no worries. Wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, we're there. Make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review on there if you enjoy us, so we can continue to reach other Colts fans just like you. So Drake, the cornerback position. Let's not dilly dally. Let's start with Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore, the ultimate professional. The guy just goes out there, does his work, and is one of the best slot cornerbacks in the NFL. Now, I will admit, last year at this time, we were having a different conversation about Kenny Moore. Could he return to form? Because there were thoughts that in the 2023 offseason, or 2022 offseason, I guess, whichever way you want to talk about it, that Kenny Moore could be traded. But instead, he comes back and he has, in my opinion, what should have been a Pro Bowl season. He played in 16 games, had 93 tackles, 8 tackles for loss. He added 1.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 returning for touchdowns. Absolutely dominated that game against the Carolina Panthers. Kenny Moore himself outscored the entire Panthers team. Very, very impressive. So as Kenny Moore enters into I think it's year not 9. That's way too many. I think it's year 8 for Kenny Moore. He's not over that 30 mark yet. He is 29, but I think he still has a lot left in the tank. Just signed a 3-year, $30 million extension with the Indianapolis Colts this offseason. And from what I saw last season, Drake, he's near the top of his game still, and maybe still at the top of it. So I'm going to ask you, what do you expect out of Kenny Moore in 2024? And do you think it could culminate in a Pro Bowl season, the second of his career?
Yes. I think that last year you saw a true return to form. I mean, while he didn't lead the team in interceptions, that went to safety Julian Blackmon. He was second. He was right there all the time. Seemed like he was involved in every single play. It was the second most tackles that he's ever accumulated in a season. And while he didn't play all 17 games, who knows if he grabs another interception, if he does play an entire season. And going back to that game against the Panthers, I understand that it was Bryce Young. I understand that it was Frank Reich. And boy, oh boy, when that schedule was made, you saw that matchup and you were like, oh, hell yeah, that's going to be so good. And it wasn't. It sucked, and the Colts won. And they didn't even score that. They didn't do that well offensively. It was Moore that took over the game, but it's still a professional team you're beating. So Moore has all of the momentum right now, Andrew, to launch himself into a Pro Bowl season. Now, I do have to say, I think that he's so good, and he's so far ahead of the next guy behind him on the depth chart as far as like experience, ability, on-field adjustments, whatever, that I think that he needs some help a little bit so he can really have that Pro Bowl season. Because I think as a slot corner on your own trying to dominate, the defensive back stats, if you will, is a little bit more difficult.
I think it was just so encouraging to see the playmaker in Kenny Moore back on the field last season, because in 2022, when he really struggled, dealt with some injuries, was only able to play 12 games, had 0 interceptions, 0 forced fumbles, only 1 sack, only 4 tackles for loss. Just the playmaking ability for Kenny Moore was gone. And I think that having those long conversations last offseason between Kenny Moore, Gus Bradley, between Ron Miles, and really zeroing in on how can we make Kenny Moore more effective for this team and for this defense. Those conversations and Kenny Moore adjusting, Gus Bradley adjusting, that was huge. And that allowed Kenny Moore to go out there and once again be one of, if not the best slot cornerback in the NFL. When Kenny Moore signed his extension, I don't only think it was for a couple of days, but he still signed the largest contract for a slot cornerback in NFL history at $30 million a year on a $10 million average per year basis. So Kenny Moore, I think he wants to be a Colt for life. Certainly Colts fans love seeing him in a Colts uniform. And I think his role is still very important, not only as a slot cornerback and what he brings in terms of playmaking, his help and run support. I mean, as far as his coverage grade, according to Pro Football Focus, he was 19th at a 79.3. That was good enough for 19th out of 126 qualifying cornerbacks. Run defense still up there in the top 30 or top 32 in the league at 29th at a 71.5. Overall was the 18th best quarterback in the NFL a season ago per Pro Football Focus. So and again, most of his reps are in the slot, but that's still such an important position
Oh
nowadays
yeah.
because it's no longer where your top wide receiver is always on the outside. These NFL offenses have really morphed into something much more than that. We see Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, really a lot of the best wide receivers in the game are taking the majority of their snaps inside. So you got to have guys that are going to be able to cover those guys and give those guys hell. And Kenny Moore is certainly one of those.
Yeah, and in nowadays NFL, it's much more about the body punches that lead to the knockout rather than going for that, big shot every time. So I think that with what you just said about guys like Tyreek Hill, Devontae Smith is another one, plays a lot of reps inside.
Mm-hmm.
That's because they wear you out. Nowadays it's quick win, quick hits, RPOs, quick read, boom, or run. Like it's a lot of that. And that's why you see so many completions now. That's why you see so many, catches from these receivers and a lot more 100-yard or 100 catch guys is because guys like Tyreek Hill, like Andrew said, they're playing inside and they're just hitting those 6, 7, 5, 9 yarders. And then boom, they play a couple snaps outside and the defense just isn't ready for it. So they're moved around a lot more and they're not just, a one spot guy anymore.
Right. And I do think that Kenny Moore still has some room to improve. According to Pro Football Focus, he did give up 4 touchdowns in coverage a season ago. I think he allowed a percentage of the targets caught against him was up 79%. So certainly you'd like to see that down a little bit. In his Pro Bowl season in 2021, that was 69%, 10 percentage points lower in 2021. And then obviously the passer rating he when targeted last season was at 98.3, which was much better than in 2022, which when it was an astounding 121.4. So he gained nearly 23 points in passer rating, but I think he could still take it down probably another 10, 12, 15 points or so to really reach that Pro Bowl status again. And I think Kenny Moore can do that. I don't think there's anything holding Kenny Moore back from being able to do that, especially if like Juju Brents, Jalen Jones can take that next step. That takes pressure off of Kenny Moore that he doesn't have to do everything out there, and it can really open things up where Kenny Moore doesn't have to worry about those various assignments. I think more experience for those guys. They can make sure they're on the same page. There was just way too many miscommunications in coverage last season. But yeah, Drake, I think if Kenny Moore can continue on this path, continue to get more comfortable in his third year in Gus Bradley's defense, I see no reason why Kenny Moore can't go out there and have another Pro Bowl season for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, and briefly, I don't think that it was a coincidence that Kenny Moore's crap season came when he had to adjust to a brand new defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that it's not easy, to just completely switch what you've known. I mean, I remember people were like, well, he needs to go to the Bears because that's the only defense he can play in with Matt Eberflus, and clearly Moore is smarter than that. He's better than that. He's arguably the best slot corner in football. So he's just getting better, it seems. So why not expect that? I expect a Pro Bowl season from Kenny Moore, and he should too.
Yeah, I think that it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if we're talking about Kenny Moore making it back to his second Pro Bowl. Exactly. Now let's talk about the Colts' second round pick a season ago, and that's Juju Brents. Had a lot of high hopes for Juju Brents coming into his rookie season, and unfortunately, he started out with that injury bug. So didn't really participate in the offseason program, was in and out during training camp. So that got off to a slow start. I think his debut was actually that week 3 game against the Baltimore Ravens. But Juju Brents, it just seemed like the biggest thing against him was just not being able to stay healthy and not being able to stay on the field and get into that rhythm. Only played in 9 contests last season. And I don't know if necessarily how I would need to check out the game log, but I don't think Juju Brents played more than like 4 consecutive games last season. It looks like he played from week 3 to week 7, and then from week 15 to week 18. So I guess a 5-game stretch was the longest stretch for Juju Brents. So honestly, Drake, in my opinion, the biggest thing for Brent is just staying healthy. If he can stay healthy, I think that is huge for this Colts defense. And I also think last year you kind of saw that take effect because Juju Brents was getting better late in the season. I know he gave up that big play to Nico Collins against the Houston Texans. Every cornerback is going to give up a big touchdown in the NFL. That's how the NFL is. But just a week prior, when you're talking about Juju Brents going up against Davante Adams, he was very physical with Davante Adams, going up against probably a top 2 or 3 wide receiver in the NFL, and Juju Brents more than held his own. So I think the talent is there. It's just about putting it all together and staying healthy. So that's what I think is what's needed for Brents to take the next step. What do you think is the key to that?
I agree because you're looking at the game log. I mean, you've got some solid performances in here, okay, and especially against the Rams, especially against the Ravens. You had 4 tackles, 9 tackles, 4 tackles, 7 tackles. You had a couple. You didn't have any for loss, but he had a key interception against the Jaguars, and then he had a key pass defense against the Ravens. I think he also had a forced fumble recovery against the Ravens. I mean, so you saw what Juju can do. The thing is, for the love of God, those injuries happened at the absolute worst time. Like you said, if you go and look at his game log, you got 4 games, 5 games after missing, I think, the first one. And then you've got a big chunk of inactive, and then you've got more games. So don't everyone's going to remember the last thing they saw, right? And that was unfortunately Juju Brents getting absolutely put on a platter for serving by Nico Collins. But here's the thing. Nico Collins, I believe, is going to still be that number 1 receiver. I think Diggs will be number 2. So I think he's a great player. All right. And he could cook a lot of people. And Juju Brents was also a rookie. Okay. And he was playing that second half of that stretch thing, the second stretch of his season where he was active. So I think that the sky's the limit. Like you said, he just needs to stay healthy because the length is there. The stride is there. He's not like you said, he's not the fastest guy, but that's not his game. He's more of a zone physical man corner that, like you said, with Davante Adams, will just try to match that physicality. And he's pretty freaking big for a corner. So he's going to match your physicality more often than not. And it's not going to be easy to move him. So I think that expecting him to win a foot race is ridiculous. So I think that as he adjusts to this defense, as he learns his strengths and weaknesses, what he can and can't do in the NFL now, I think you're going to start to get that second round talent out of him.
And that's I mean, that's just not Juju Brent's game. He's
No.
a big, long, physical cornerback. I mean, he's 6'3", almost 200 pounds, very long arms and wingspan. And that's coming out. That's kind of what we talked about, Drake, is that this guy isn't going to be your press man corner that's going to follow some guy all over the field. There's very rarely cornerbacks in the NFL that do that anymore. This is a guy that is really built to be a zone cornerback and to be physical at the line of scrimmage. So if you remember, I mean, I am not comparing him to this guy whatsoever, but I'm kind of talking about their builds. Richard Sherman in that Legion of Boom defense was a bigger, longer, more physical cornerback that played in the Legion of Boom in this Gus Bradley defense, and he made a career out of that. Now, Richard Sherman wasn't a guy that followed wide receivers around. Richard Sherman stayed on his side. When he was a fantastic zone defender. He read the quarterback's eyes very, very well, and when receivers got into his zone, he took care of them. And I think that's kind of what the goal is for Juju Brents. It's not to be a cornerback that follows a guy all around the field, but he's going to be fantastic in zone. He's a very smart player. He uses his physicality very, very well. And I'm looking at kind of some of the numbers that Juju Brents had against the Las Vegas Raiders, primarily lined up on Davante Adams. for most of the game. Juju Brents only allowed a passer rating of 71.3 in that game. Sure, he gave up 76 yards in coverage, but that was on 13 targets. He only allowed 7 catches, and he didn't allow. He had 3 pass breakups, 4 tackles, 2 run stops. So they were trying to pepper Juju Brents in that game. And for a second round rookie who was only in his 8th career game at the time, going up against, like I said, a top 2 or 3 wide receiver in the NFL, Davante Adams poses a threat against any defense, and Juju Brents really did a good job against Davante Adams. There were many plays where he was ball fighting with him, they knocked the ball out of his hands a couple of times. So the talent is there. It's just about putting it together. Again, do I think Juju Brents can be a Pro Bowl cornerback? I'm not sure about that, but I do think he can be a very solid starter for the Indianapolis Colts. Will that be this year? Will it be a couple years down the road? We'll have to see. But you want to see Juju Brents stay healthy. You want to see Juju Brents out there competing. You don't want to see as many mental mistakes, and you'd like to see some more turnovers. Only 1 interception last year. I think he only had the 1 forced fumble, which was against the Baltimore Ravens in his first game as an Indianapolis Colt. Had a fumble recovery. But again, you want to just see more aggression on the football, more forced turnovers, whether it is forced fumbles, interceptions, just being around the ball more. And I think with time, that's what you can get out of Juju Brents. But again, he's got to stay healthy. Those live reps are just so important. He has been healthy all off season, which is fantastic to hear. Didn't miss a single rep in practice throughout the offseason program, mandatory minicamp, and he's coming into training camp 100%. That is fantastic for Juju Brents, and the more reps that he gets out there, going up in practice against the likes of Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell on the outside, the better he's going to be for it.
Yeah, and when you only play 9 out of 17, games for your rookie season, and they're not all consecutive, or at least most of them aren't consecutive, and they're in pieces like you mentioned, it's hard to get in the zone. It's hard to get in a stride. We mentioned this about Kwity Paye with his injuries and having to restart in certain developmental areas. It seemed Juju Brents just needs to stay healthy. He just needs to stay out there and continue to get those reps, because as he gains experience, learns how to use those weapons like those long arms and those long limbs to keep up with these receivers and disrupt passing lanes for quarterbacks, you're going to start to see this guy blossom. Now, I do got to say this real quick. I love how you mentioned, will he be a Pro Bowler? I don't know about that. Okay. A lot of Colts fans are high on Juju. You should be, but you got to be realistic too. So he's going to struggle sometimes with those faster receivers. So I think that a defensive whole will help him a lot more too. So going back to what we said about Kenny Moore, if these guys kind of play better together, you're going to see each one of them, I think, progress. And that also includes Juju Brents, maybe even the most since he's so young.
And NFL Nerd asked, did y'all see any Brents reps in spring camp? We didn't see any reps because Drake and I weren't there. What we did hear from Jake Arthur and from people that were there able to take in the reps from Juju Brents, he looked good. He looked physical. He was competing for the football. His coverage was I guess the right term would be stickier than it was a season ago. There was a clip that the Colts posted on social media of, I think it was Adonai Mitchell catching a ball over Juju Brents, but again, it was a perfectly placed ball by Anthony Richardson.
One play will send people into a spot.
one play out of the probably 150 reps that they had throughout the offseason and mandatory mini camp, but for all intents and purposes, Brents looked good. He was crisp on his cuts. He was physical at the point of the attack for what you could be without having pads, and he was able to stick with the wide receivers. There weren't any lapses or miscommunications in coverage. So again, for me, it's just staying healthy and the continued reps, and I think the rest will take care of itself with Juju Brents. We saw the flashes out there that he can be a very good starter for this team. He's just got to go out there and do it at this point in time.
Yeah, and look, I do think that with his length, I think that with his athleticism, the defensive scheme is a perfect fit for what he's trying to do. Going back to what you said about Richard Sherman, will he hit that level? You hope, but more than likely, probably not. But he can be a very solid corner in this scheme where his zone presence and his zone ability is really going to be put, I think, on the highest level, just for the defense to see. So expect Juju Brents to take at least a little bit of a leap. He just has to stay healthy, or else none of it really matters.
And the other corner on the outside, Drake, one that we didn't even expect to be a starter last season, potentially not even making the roster. But boy, did he come on and really filled in well. And that's Jalen Jones, the 7th-round pick out of Texas A&M. All he did was go out there and produce. Whenever his number was called upon, starting in training camp, when Darius Rush and Juju Brents had injuries, it gave Jalen Jones the opportunity. And he took that opportunity, went out there and secured a spot on the team. And he beat out, let's just point blank say, he beat out Darius Rush last season. Rush was not healthy, did not perform well in training camp, and Jalen Jones was healthy and did perform well. So the spot went to Jones. Then Dallas Flowers gets hurt in week 4, tears his Achilles. The next man up is Jalen Jones, and he locks down that starting spot all season long. And now coming into 2024, Jalen Jones is the starter at cornerback. Yes, there is a competition because it's not guaranteed that he will start, and all positions theoretically are have competitions. But throughout the offseason program and mandatory minicamp, Jalen Jones took the majority of those starting reps opposite of Juju Brents. So I think it's going to take a lot for Dallas Flowers or anyone else to supplant Jalen Jones as the starter right now. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that Jalen Jones can rest on his laurels. He has to get better as well. He showed some great promise at times. Other times there were lapses where you're looking and he's a guy that still has plenty of room to improve. Again, he's a bigger corner, 6'2", 203 pounds, but started all 10 games that's after or I guess so it was week 7 when Flowers went down. But he started the final 10 games of the season, 44 tackles, 5 pass deflections. But the biggest thing, Drake, no forced turnovers, 0 interceptions, 0 forced fumbles. Jalen Jones, I think, needs to produce more as far as turning the ball over and making plays on the football. That was his biggest weakness. But overall, as we head into 2024, with Jalen Jones as the projected starter there at outside cornerback, do you think that Jalen Jones can be the answer as the other starter, or do you think that rookie season was more of a mirage, and we're going to see kind of Jalen Jones come back down to reality, and maybe he'll look like a 7th-round pick this season?
To answer that question in short, his statistics last year with those, no turnovers and stuff like that, he didn't have any turnovers. He had 1 fumble recovery and no interceptions in his senior year with the Aggies. Okay, now when you went back and watched that man's tape, you looked at his stats and you're like, wow, 72 total or 98 total career tackles, no sacks, 2 for loss, 3 interceptions, 14 passes defended. Yippee. The thing is about that guy, though, is he would snuff out receivers. That was his skill. It wasn't necessary. He didn't even really get an opportunity in college to take the ball away because quarterbacks couldn't throw it his direction because the receiver was just gone like Houdini. He would just blanket them. And so I'm encouraged by Jalen Jones, man. I think that he does have that skill to be a cornerback that will start and could potentially even be better than Brents. I'm not saying he will be, but I'm saying that he right now looks fantastic compared to a 7th-round pick. I think that his statistics are kind of reminiscent of his senior year. I think that's his style. I don't think you're going to get a lot of interceptions out of this guy. You're not going to get the ball thrown to this guy a lot. They peppered Juju Brents in that game. They did not pepper Jalen Jones in that game against the Raiders, although Jones did struggle against Adams at times, going back to what you said. There's a lot of room for this guy to grow, an immense amount, and he has to more than the rest because he's got a 7th-round tag on him, so it does go with you until you get that second contract. So I think that Jalen Jones working with Ron Miles, working with the Gus Bradley defense the second season, I think that working with a guy like Kenny Moore and just continuing to build his skill set and his experience, he's so damn young too. Oh my goodness, the guy is like 21 or 22. So he got a lot of time to do that, man. And I think that if he can make that happen, boy, the Colts will be happy in that rookie contract, because that is dirt cheap for a starting cornerback.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Jalen Jones and his full body of work last season, he definitely had his ups and downs.
Oh yeah,
probably the highest of highs was against Carolina, when I remember he went out there and was just a menace there in Carolina.
Oh, he was bullying.
Yes, I think he allowed 4 catches, but it was only on 21 yards. So he was, if the ball was caught there, the receiver wasn't getting far. I think he was just fantastic in coverage that day, but he also had his downs. I mean, against Cleveland Browns, he wasn't very good. Against Tennessee, that second matchup in Tennessee wasn't the greatest performance out of Jalen Jones, excuse me. And then, like you mentioned, against the Raiders, while Juju Brents had his best game in coverage, Jalen Jones had one of his worst games in coverage. Allowed 50% of his catches to be caught, but he allowed, I think it was in total, 5 catches that day. He allowed 2 touchdowns that day as well. And I think that's the big thing for Jalen Jones, is to shore up his coverage in the red zone. He allowed 6 touchdowns last year, the most of any Colts cornerback. So and I think you can look at it both ways. You can look at it as a glass half full and say, hey, these guys went out there and played well, and there's still a lot of room for improvement for Juju Brents and Jalen Jones, and they're both still young. Or you could look at it in another direction and say that what's really the ceiling for these guys, and are these guys going to be good enough for the Colts, that the Colts can actually win with these guys and not have maybe necessarily lockdown corners on the outside. So it's really kind of where you sit with all of this, but overall, I think Jalen Jones, he has the right makeup there, because you wouldn't go from a 7th round pick and just show out over and over and over again if you didn't have that right makeup. And like you said, Drake, much of his time in college, teams weren't throwing to Jalen Jones. Now, he did slip in the draft because of the lack of ball production. He did run a slower 40. I think it was like a 4.57 40 at the scouting combine a year ago. That's slow for a corner. And Juju Brents, we say, isn't the fastest corner. He ran a 4.5, either a 4.53 or 4.5 flat. I can't exactly remember. But Jalen Jones didn't show that on the field last season. Again, a physical cornerback. I think that's what the Colts want, is physical cornerbacks, not necessarily looking for burners. We'll see if that works out. It can be good in some instances and really bad in others. So if we get another season where these Colts cornerbacks get burnt over and over again and just don't have the speed, that again, that's kind of where you're playing with fire by not addressing the cornerback room this offseason, really, with any outside additions. But getting back to Jalen Jones, Drake, I think something that he can definitely work on is his run defense. He wasn't that great against the run. Was only, I think, according to Pro Football Focus, 81st out of 121 cornerbacks against the run. The coverage grade just 2 up and down, 97th out of 126. But again, the biggest thing with these cornerbacks is just live reps and staying healthy. So the more live reps these guys get, and usually it does take a season or two for cornerbacks to adjust to the NFL game, because it's much different than college. The wide receivers are much faster, much more physical. It's going to take some time to adjust. Going into year 2, I think we are going to see Jalen Jones take another step forward. Again, is it going to be a huge step forward? No, but can he solidify himself as a solid starter? Potentially. Again, he's just going to have to go out there on the field and prove it.
Yeah, not everybody's Sauce Gardner, a cornerback where you can just go out there and, defensive player of the year or rookie of the year and then all pro and Pro Bowl and all that stuff. It's very, very rare, because outside of quarterback, I think cornerback's the hardest position to play in football. So, because you're waiting for those receivers to do something.
I
So it's
agree.
like, it's just ridiculously difficult. So I think that with what Jalen Jones has done thus far, the numbers are up and down, like you said last season. But what are you expecting from a 7th-round pick? We were not even expecting this guy potentially to make the team. Instead, all he does is get one guy taken off the team, supplants him, and then starts. You just needed one opportunity. So I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what he does in year 2. This is probably this is a massive season for Jalen Jones to prove that he's not just a fluke.
Exactly. And I want to, as we kind of move on to the rest of the cornerback room, Wyatt Law's got a great question here. Given Dallas Flowers' injury recovery, will he factor into the kick return game, or does Gould have that job locked up? So that's a great question, Wyatt. From what we've heard and seen at mandatory minicamp, Gould was the one taking the majority of the reps as the kick returner. However, with Dallas Flowers, I think if Gould goes down, I think Dallas Flowers can be an option there because Flowers was also returning kicks. So may not be the primary kick returner, or if the Colts use 2 kick returners back there, because that's now an option this year. Will we see Flowers and Gould back there? I think that's definitely an option, but I would still go into training camp with the assumption and thinking that Anthony Gould probably has the upper hand as that kick return man and the punt return guy.
Yeah, and you're also talking about, I think that they want more of Dallas Flowers on the field playing cornerback, and you're not going to see much of Anthony Gould on the field as a wide receiver. So I think that you just don't want to put Dallas Flowers out there as a returner and get him hurt when you think he could be a big part of your defense, is my point. Not saying you want anyone to get hurt, but you got to strategize for that kind of thing. And I think that it's better to just have Gould out there. He's more of a specialist anyway.
I agree. Shout out to my beautiful wife, Danielle, for the super sticker, and shout out to my son, because apparently this one is from Jackson.
He doesn't have any money.
I didn't know a 2-month-old had a job to give money. So he's given daddy's money back to daddy, but hey,
that's your money.
That's my money. Hey, I appreciate all of the support. I guess he's thanking me from changing a big blowout diaper earlier today. Wasn't pretty, guys, but it's what parenting and fatherhood is all about. Really appreciate all of the support as always. So Drake, when we think of the depth at cornerback, obviously Dallas Flowers, who figures to vie for a starting rep if Jalen Jones, or starting reps if Jalen Jones starts to struggle. The Colts drafted Jalen Simpson with one of their 5th-round picks this offseason, who he played cornerback primarily at Auburn. Then in his senior season played safety for the majority of it. The Colts are moving him back to the cornerback room where they think he fits best for their scheme. And then Micah Abraham, the 6th-round pick out of Marshall, who has insane ball production there at Marshall. So those are kind of the main depth pieces. Darrell Baker Jr. could get thrown in there, but I think he could potentially be a cut candidate. We'll have to see. But which one of the depth cornerbacks really stands out to you, or is the most intriguing as we head into the season?
I really like Dallas Flowers, man. I think that if he stays healthy, I loved his speed. He's got, like you're talking about, Brents and Jones. Okay, so those guys, let's just assume they're starting. Kenny Moore's starting at the slot. You need a guy who can keep up with the speedsters. Okay, Moore is fast, but Dallas Flowers is punt and kick return fast. Okay, so his hip movement, he's going to be able to swivel with those guys, those quick win guys, those twitchy guys that move real quick, kind of like Josh Downs, those quick win dudes. Expect this guy to be able to keep up with them, and the streakers that go down the field like a Devontae Adams. If he's got to step on somebody, Dallas Flowers has the speed to get back into contention for the ball. So I think that if he just stays healthy, he's got a role as a cornerback in this defense. Now, while he showed promise in coverage, he was crap in run defense. I mean, he would get blown up in blocks. You'd see these offensive linemen come out on poles, and in the first 4 or 5 games of the season, Dallas Flowers, I mean, he's only like 195 pounds, real lanky cornerback. So just needs to get better at somehow figuring out how to maneuver that, get underneath the block, beat the blocker to the point of attack, something, because if he can stay healthy and just get a little bit better at run defense, because I don't think he's a starting corner. I think he's a solid rotational guy. I think that he has a role on this defense, and he could make an impact just because of his relentless speed.
if Dallas Flowers is your fourth or fifth corner, you feel really, really good about that.
Oh yeah.
Because of his speed, because of his coverage ability. I think he was graded as the second best cornerback for the Colts in terms of coverage, right behind
Yep.
Kenny Moore.
Yep.
But you're right, against the run, he was a liability. So he everything in terms of his injury recovery looks good. Dallas Flowers, he actually injured and tore his Achilles after Ashton Doolin tore his ACL, and Dallas
That's wild.
Flowers was already back on the field in full contact and with no restrictions in off-season program and mandatory minicamp, and Ashton Doolin has yet to return. So that just shows how well his injury recovery is going. Dallas Flowers, for all intents and purposes, is expected to hit the ground running with no restrictions in training camp and be a full go. So I like that Dallas Flowers is back because he's got that dog mentality. He's going to push Juju Brents and Jalen Jones on the outside to make sure they are getting better, because if not, Flowers is nipping at the heels, ready to get back onto the field. So that would have been my pick as well, Drake. I'm a huge fan of Dallas Flowers, and I think he's got that. I just love his mentality, love how hard that guy works, and he doesn't take anything for granted. He's always out there, no matter if it's practice, a preseason game, the regular season. He's giving it his all, 110%. But since you already picked Dallas Flowers, I think the most intriguing player, or the other intriguing player of this depth group, I'm going to go with Micah Abraham, just because he was such a non-Colts pick. Because you how many times have we said, if you want to know who the Colts are going after, go to Kentley Platt's Raz website, and just the top athletes, those are probably the top of the Colts board. Not Micah Abraham. Micah Abraham I think his RAS was in the threes. It was, I think, one of the lowest, if not the lowest, RAS grade for a player that Chris Ballard has drafted, with the Indianapolis Colts. It was a 3.7 for Micah Abraham, and he's kind of small too. He's kind of undersized as well. When you look at for an outside cornerback, that's not where he's going to be playing. He's 5'9", 185 pounds. This guy is going to be a slot cornerback. So, but the ball production is just absolutely insane, Drake. When you look at his stats, I don't have them in front of me. Let me try to look those up real quick. But it was insane how many interceptions he came away with, how many pass deflections he came away with. Right here. So in his 62 career games, so he played a lot in college, had 150 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 55 passes defensed. 55 passes defense, 12 interceptions, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, a field goal block. This guy was all over the place. And honestly, that's why the Colts drafted him, because of his nose for the football, because of the way he produces turnovers. That is why the Colts drafted him. That's why they took a shot on Mike Abraham, because when you get in that 6th and 7th round, you're just taking shots at the dartboard at that point. So he might not be a super athlete, but if Micah Abraham can come in and get you some turnovers like that, that's someone that you want to have on your team as a depth piece, and certainly someone who can play on special teams.
So there was a guy named Brent Grimes that some fans may remember, came from the very illustrious football college of Shippensburg. So this guy had a 2.23 RAS score. All right, he stood a whopping 5'10", 185 pounds, very small guy, and he absolutely put on a show of turnovers. I mean, the guy had a total of 33 career interceptions. He started with the Falcons, got hurt, goes to the Dolphins, just continues to be a Pro Bowler. That's who Micah Abraham's RAS score and his at least college play reminds me of. Is a smaller guy, not big, not that athletic based off of the standards of an NFL football player. But you go out there and you have, I mean, look at Brent Grimes' highlights. You're talking one-handed fingertip interceptions, all sorts of crazy crap out there. I'm not saying Micah Abraham's going to be that guy, but Brent Grimes was undrafted. So I think there's a reason that the Colts were like, you know what? He's not athletic, but man, oh man, can he take that football away? Or man, he just finds the ball. It's an unteachable skill that comes with development from certain players that on defense, Shaq Leonard knows for the football. Okay. Maybe you've got that with Micah Abraham. Maybe we're talking about another Jalen Jones here. Who knows? But I love that pick. I was damn near close to putting that one as my pick, but he's a rookie. I just don't feel comfortable doing that yet.
He's going to be a fun one to watch when training camp comes along, which, by the way, first Colts training camp practice 1 week from today, guys. We're almost there. But as we conclude here on our cornerback preview, of course, we got to talk about where things stand in the AFC South from the Colts cornerback room, comparing it to the Texans, Jaguars, and Tennessee Titans. Obviously, we ran through the top four: Kenny Moore the second, Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, and Dallas Flowers. When we go to the AFC South champion Houston Texans, Derek Stingley Jr., a former top 5 pick in the NFL draft, second round rookie Kamari Lassiter comes in there, Desmond King in the slot, and I just noticed I put Kind in there, and then Jeff Okudah as number 4. And as we move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, you have one of the best cornerbacks in the AFC in Tyson Campbell. Ronald Darby, an unrestricted free agent that the Jaguars acquired from the Baltimore Ravens this offseason. Jarrian Jones, I think, was a 5th round pick or a mid-round pick, we'll just say that, of the Jaguars this offseason. And then Monteric Brown rounds out that group. Then the Tennessee Titans. I know a lot of Colts fans thought this guy was going to be a Colt, but really there was a lot of smoke, but there really wasn't any fire around this. L'Jarius Sneed, who the Titans acquired from the Kansas City Chiefs. They also have Chidobe Awuzie, from the Cincinnati Bengals, who came over as a free agent. Roger McCreary, who's been a starter for quite some time with the Tennessee Titans. And then Caleb Farley, who was a former first-round pick of the Titans and has not panned out really in the slightest. So, Drake, looking at the AFC South, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you look at all these cornerback groups?
You know, I got to say the Texans really stuck out to me with Derek Stingley, with I think it was, let me see, I've got to pull up here, Desmond King, Steven Nelson. I mean, man, Derek Stingley just continues to impress me. He was elite in coverage. He was a little bit of a liability at times in run defense, but at the end of the day, he still provided a solid base. But man, you're looking at Lassiter, you're looking at King. King had a good season last year. For the Jaguars. Tyson Campbell, I think that he's been a little bit up and down, but when he's on, he's really on. And Ronald Darby is a solid veteran to bring in, and just to have. Now, going back, I wanted the Colts to avoid the hell out of L'Jarius Sneed, but I wanted them to get Chidobe Awuzie. So the Titans, I mean, both of their top 2 are intriguing. Now, I will say that L'Jarius Sneed doesn't have Chris Jones. Well, he's got DeForest, or he's got Jeffrey Simmons, but he does not have Trent McDuffie. Okay, he does not have Steve Spagnuolo, calling that defense. So we'll see if that's an overpay by the Titans. I'm just glad the Colts avoided him. So,
yeah,
sorry, that's my rant. And the Colts, at the end of the day, I think that you've got a veteran at the tippy top, and then you've got 3 young guys that 2 of those guys had real promising years. One of them had a promising tiny little span of games. So really a lot of unknowns with the Colts.
It's kind of interesting to see how these cornerback rooms are constructed, because if you look at the Titans, the Jaguars, and the Texans, they all have a bona fide cornerback 1 in Sneed, right, Campbell, and Stingley.
Yep.
On the outside, I should say. With the Colts, their top cornerback Kenny Moore plays primarily in the slot. Now, when the Colts are in their base defense, which is rare, but if they are in 4-3 and they have 3 linebackers out there, only 2 cornerbacks, then you will see Kenny Moore still out there, but on the outside. It'll be Moore and Brents. But typically the Colts are in their nickel, their dime, the quarters defense where they have at least 3 cornerbacks on the field, and so Moore plays primarily in the slot. So it's interesting to see that. Another thing is really all 3 of these, or at least the Jaguars and Texans, I should say, have rookies. They're figure to play prominent roles. Kamari Lassiter is a 2nd-round pick out of Georgia. He will probably start on the outside opposite of Stingley. Jerry and Jones will probably be in the slot for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Titans with Snead, Awuzie, McCreary, and Farley, all veterans, a very, very veteran group there for the Titans. While the Colts have 3 cornerbacks that are well, 2 are entering year 2. Dallas Flowers is entering year 3, basically year 2 for him as well. So a lot can happen with these groups. There can be a lot of different movement from all of these teams. We'll kind of have to see which team really rises to the top. But we're going to make our rankings now. So Drake, let's do it. Give me who from 1 to 4 or from 4 to 1, however you want to do it. Rank the cornerback groups in the AFC South.
Man, these are so damn hard sometimes. Like I'm looking at this and I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to do this? Okay, so all right, we'll go 4th. We'll go worst because I think that this is such a close battle. I'm going to go with the Jaguars. And I 3 and 4, Jerry and Jones, Monteric Brown, I believe that they're both rookies, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think Monteric Brown maybe in year 2.
Okay,
I think he's in year 2. I think he was a rookie last season.
Okay, so still. Okay, so actually he was a 2022 draft pick. My apologies. So he hasn't
2 seasons.
Yeah, and he hasn't played too much. He's had a little bit of exposure. He's had some halfway decent games, but I got to put them at the bottom just because Ronald Darby, I mean, while he really is still playing at a pretty good level for a veteran that's been in the league as long as he has, him and Campbell really, I think, are top heavy with that cornerback group. So I'd put them 4th. I'd put 3rd for the Titans because I do think that Snead is going to drop off a bit. I really do. I don't think that they've got a Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator. They do not have a Kansas City Chiefs defense, with that level of athleticism and talent. I think there's going to be a little bit of drop off at least at first. So don't kill me, Titans fans. I think that Awuzie has got a lot of ability, but he is in his later 20s. So we'll see if that continues. And then, like you said, McCreary and Farley, they are veterans, but I don't see as much upside, especially in 2024, being 3rd and 4th on the depth chart. And then 2nd's going to be the Colts. Now, the reason I'm putting the Colts, actually, you know what? I need to make a change. I'm going to put the Titans 2nd and the Colts 3rd. And the reason I'm putting the Colts 3rd and the Titans 2nd is because of that inexperience. I think that Kenny Moore has shown what he can do, but Dallas Flowers, while he's going into year 3, you've barely seen him play cornerback. Jalen Jones was a 7th-round rookie last season, so we need to see if that's not a flash in the pan. And Juju Brents played 9 out of 17 games, missing 8. Mm-hmm. So I think that you have to put them 3rd. The Titans are 2nd, and then number 1's the Texans for me. I think that Lassiter. All right, so you're looking at a rookie there, okay, but Stingley is a beast. He is a beast at cornerback. Desmond King, also a beast. I think Jeff Okudah, really a liability in run defense, but a phenomenal cover corner. So I think that that's the best group just because you've got younger guys. And I am high on Lassiter. I think that he's a good enough draft pick that they're trying to kind of get out of him what the Colts are trying to get out of Juju Brents. So I think that it's a similar role for him. So it goes Texans number 1. Okay, then the Titans number 2, the Colts number 3, and the Jags number 4 for me. Sorry, I got confused there and had to switch them around. A lot of names.
Yeah, very interesting though, because I think our rankings are going to be much different.
I love it.
Which is interesting because I'm going to go number 1. I'm going with the Titans. at number one, because
Ooh, going veterans.
I think L'Jarius Sneed is a very good cornerback. Now, when I say he's a top 5 cornerback in the NFL, no, I think he's borderline top 10
You think he's
cornerback
worth
in the
22 million?
NFL.
Isn't that what he's?
No, I don't think he's worth that. We had that conversation back this off season. Let's not get into it again because Titans fans will say that I'm coping when really I'm just being real. But I do like the group that they have. Sneed, Awuzie, and McCreary. They're all solid guys. Is there a top 5 cornerback among them? No, probably not. I think the cornerback with the most probably the most potential on this team in the AFC South is Derek Stingley Jr.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I think it's the Tennessee Titans. I think the Titans have as a group that top unit with Sneed, Awuzie, McCreary, and that's rare because I don't think I picked the Titans to have a top group yet. I think they really do with the Titans here. Number 2, I am going to go Texans. I am going to go Texans because I think Derek Stingley Jr. is a phenomenal cornerback. Desmond King, you're right, Drake. He did have a really good season last year, and I think Kamari Lassiter is a really good fit for what DeMeco Ryans wants to do on defense. So because of that, I am going to have the Texans there at number 2. I'm going to put the Colts at 3 because, like I said, Kenny Moore, I think he's a Pro Bowl cornerback there in the slot. And if Juju Brents and Jalen Jones can take another step forward, there's no reason that those two cannot be on the same level as Kamari Lassiter, Desmond King, even like Roger McCreary, Awuzie, Chidobe Awuzie. I'm going to get that name right.
It's
Chidobe Awuzie.
I had to hear about 10 times.
Brents and Jones, if they take that step forward, they could be on the same level as all of those guys. So I'm going to go 3, but maybe I should put it's not a very big gap between the Texans at 2 and the Colts there at 3, and then I'll have the Jaguars at 4 because I know Tyson Campbell's a very good cornerback, and Ronald Darby I think is still has plenty left in the tank, but again, they are up and down. There needs to be more consistency there. So maybe I'll go Colts 3A, Jaguars 3B because I think it's very close between those because again, I have a lot of faith in Tyson Campbell. Just me personally, I think he's a fantastic cornerback. Just had an up and down season ago, but I know the talent is there. So in my opinion, it goes Titans 1, Texans 2, Colts 3A, Jaguars 3B there in the AFC South. A lot of big names, especially Sneed coming to the Tennessee Titans. You look again at those 3 on the other teams there with Sneed, Campbell, and Stingley Jr. Really good number 1 options. Kenny Moore's a really good number 1 option. He's just plays mostly in the slot. Can Juju Brents get up to that level? I don't know. I think it would take a huge jump this season for that to happen with Juju Brents, but I also think that Juju Brents has it in him to be a very, very good starter with the Indianapolis Colts and potentially be a top 20 to 25 cornerback in the NFL, which as a second round pick, that's not too bad to have.
No, and actually our picks are the 3 and 4 are actually the same. It's just you've got the Titans as 1. I had them as 2. And then you've got the Texans as 2, and I had them as 1. But I did want to say I screwed up. L'Jarius Sneed is not making $22 million a year. The Titans are only paying him $19.1 million a year, and they only are, guaranteeing $51.5 million of the $76.4. So
it's a lot of money. A lot of money for a guy that has that's never made a Pro Bowl. But I was told repeatedly all offseason that L'Jarius Sneed is a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. So
he might be, but he has not shown it yet.
I guess we'll have to see what happens down there in Tennessee. But we have a fun question here from NFL Nerd. He's asked who in the secondary gets cut before the season. So if I had to pick right now what the cornerback room looks like as Drake clears his drink, attaboy, brother, I would say that the Colts right now are probably keeping 6 cornerbacks. Moore, Brents, Jones, Flowers, Simpson, Abraham. That would be my 6. I would say that Darrell Baker Jr. probably gets cut. Amir Speed probably gets cut. But I think you keep your top 4 guys, and then as long as the rookies can stay healthy and show that they can contribute on special teams, I think they'll find a spot on the roster as well. But Drake, what do you think?
I think that you got guys. I'm looking right here. I think like you said, Daryl Baker Jr. He'll figure out a way, I think, to get on the roster because there is at least enough promise for a special teams role. But Chris Lamons, no. Amir Speed, even though I'm actually kind of high on Amir Speed, no. I think you got practice squad guys with Amir Speed, and I think you have a cut candidate with Chris Lamons.
NFL Nerd, thank you so much for the super chat, brother. We
Pleasure.
really do appreciate it. NFL Nerd has stuck with us all summer long, despite nothing going on in Colts world, diving into these positional previews with us. Better than Stats Matt. Stats Matt's nowhere to be found. I'm just kidding. He's got stuff to do with his family.
Yeah, but
I think
family, Horseshoe Huddle.
I think his daughters are doing like softball or something, so he's out there supporting them. I mean, whatever, dude, whatever. But NFL Nerd, thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support. Drake, let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors before we get out of here tonight. Something interesting happened this week for a couple of quarterbacks on the Indianapolis Colts roster. Jason Bean and Keaton Slovis were selected in the UFL draft. Jason Bean was actually the number 1 overall pick to the Memphis Showboats, while Keaton Slovis was a second-round pick to the DC Defenders at number 12 overall. Drake, you wrote a piece about this for horseshoehuddle.com. Now, this doesn't mean that they're leaving the Colts now, but what it does mean is that if Bean or Slovis or both do not make the Colts roster, don't want to take a practice squad spot, they do have a home in the UFL, and being taken as first and second round picks, they probably have a good chance, especially Bean, playing right away.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that the UFL has access to the NFL's undrafted free agents, basically like to draft them. So right now the UFL holds Slovis's and Bean's rights, and so in layman's terms, if the Colts cut them, which inevitably expect that, okay, just expect it. And if no other team in the NFL grabs them, well, then they report to the UFL team. And so at that point, they'll start their contract. So, hey, man, it's still a professional league. It's the combination of the USFL and the XFL. There were NFL formers that were playing in those leagues, ladies and gentlemen. So this is not it's a downgrade. Okay, because it's not the talent level, but it gives opportunities to guys like Slovis and Bean, who are on a team right now that's headed by Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco, and Sam Ehlinger, which those are your quarterbacks, Colts fans. Okay, so just tune in March because that's when the season begins for the UFL, and I think it goes for a few months, and then there's the championship. But hey, man, it'll be interesting. We'll see if Jason Bean can really take off. I'm actually excited for him because the Colts thought he was so athletic. They put him as a wide receiver and a quarterback on their depth chart.
I'm interested to see what Bean can do in Colts camp and if he can get some reps in the preseason.
Who knows?
That's going to be fun to watch. But I mean, hey, if Chris Ballard if these guys are going number 1 and number 12 in the UFL draft, I mean, the Colts group or front office group must be doing something right with their undrafted free agent group. I think I saw Wyatt say that on X, so I'll give a shout out to Wyatt as well.
Legendary.
And then finally, guys, if you're going to the week 16 game at Lucas Oil Stadium against the Tennessee Titans, make sure to wear white. The Colts announced that the week 16 game against the Titans will be their inaugural winter whiteout game. So the Colts will wear white uniforms from jerseys, pants, socks. It'll be a complete whiteout. Basically, they're away uniforms, but they're encouraging fans to wear white as well to completely white out Lucas Oil Stadium. So, they said this is the inaugural winter whiteout game, so I think you can expect more winter whiteout games to come in future seasons. But hey, I mean, I'm not going to fault the Colts for trying to spice things up and get a whiteout going in the middle of December. It's kind of a fun themed game.
Yeah, and they've also started exploring new uniform ideas, which I love. You got the Indiana Knights last year; it's confirmed for this year. Now the whiteout, so I like the fact the Colts are exploring new logos, new jersey ideas. It's pretty exciting.
Might as well. Can you switch it up a little bit? The Colts have been so traditional for so long. Let's get
Yes.
the Indiana Knights in there. Let's get a whiteout game in there. Let's spruce things up there in Lucas Oil Stadium, which is going to have that new turf, which we'll all be excited to see on August 11th, as the
You were
Colts
thinking
take on.
UFL.
Yep, I was, as the Colts take on the Denver Broncos. So that's our show for today, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in to talk about the cornerback position with us. Want to give a shout out to my beautiful wife Danielle and my son Jackson, and NFL Nerd for your super chats today. Really, really appreciate all of your support and everyone else that joined us tonight to talk about the Colts cornerback room. If you haven't done so, please go follow us on our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on_SI on X, and then subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live so you never miss us. And if you can't catch us live, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. Make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, guys, if you don't believe it now or yet, I don't know what's wrong with you. Drake is easily the hardest working man in Colts media. There is zero news going out there, and Drake is pumping out 3 articles a day on horseshoehuddle.com. Just an absolute menace, making the rest of us look bad in a very good way. So make sure you give him his flowers and go read his stuff. Drake, tell the people what they need to go check out, bud.
Yeah, give me my damn flowers. All right, people. No, I'm just kidding. No, I wrote quite a few aggregate pieces, but I do want to say I've got one coming out where I'm going to be kind of ranking the Colts position groups. And then I've got one that's going to be top 10 most important Colts for the 2024 season. So go check those out when they do release. But again, go check out Andrew Moore's Rookie Files.
I do have another Rookies Files piece out that came out today. Jalen Simpson, who started at a very small school, only about 450 kids in his high school, and made the jump to the SEC. And boy, was it a big jump. Definitely took some time for Simpson to really get on the field and make an impact, but it led to an NFL career. So make sure you check that out. We'll have Micah Abraham and Jonah Laulu next week, right before Colts training camp kicks off, where we'll be previewing and having all of the coverage from Colts camp. So guys, get back to horseshoehuddle.com and start getting ready for the start of the NFL season. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Monday night to finish off our positional previews with the safety position. Maybe the biggest question mark still remaining for the Indianapolis Colts. You won't want to miss that conversation. So until then, Colts fans, have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday night to talk more Colts football with all of you.